Welcome back to the Big Dharma Podcast. I have a super inspiring guest for you today. I'm sitting down with Elyse Shunkowitz, who is a psychotherapist that has a really inspiring story of escaping basically the centralized psychiatric world and is now supporting other people on their journey to either avoiding or getting off medication and living their best life. Welcome to the show, Elyse. I'm so glad to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. And I was so pumped when I saw you were starting a podcast. As you know, I emailed you immediately and was like,
Immediately,
yes,
yeah.
let's go. And also, can I
Yeah.
come on?
Yeah, absolutely. And your energy is one of my absolute favorites. So
I
I'm
feel
really
the same
glad to
about
have you
you.
here. Oh, thank you. And we were just talking before I started recording about how I think this is going to be, once it goes live, episode 10. And my energy on the podcast is improving. I'm finding my groove. And so I'm so excited to be sitting down with you because you have such a good, like, positive flow about your story and how you support people and living your best life. And like
Mhm.
your DJing and your whole vibe is just so awesome. So let's share all that goodness with the world. So your story is a really important one to me
Mhm.
because so many people hear that once they have a diagnosis or once they have symptoms or whatever they're dealing with in their life that's limiting them in some way, they hear from centralized doctors that they're stuck with that is
Mhm.
their story, that is their fate, and that medication is the only answer. And I mean, I just got a DM. I was telling you about this from somebody else who was saying that she got a diagnosis and she didn't even know healing was possible. And I think the more that we can share stories of transformation and true empowerment, the more it can help other people realize the possibility for themselves as well. So I'm really excited for you to share your whole journey and like how you got to be the therapist that you are today that helps people go through their healing journey. So let's go back to the beginning. Like tell me your story about how you got in the hands of the psychiatric model. What was going on for you? When did that start?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Way back when. So, from early childhood, I grew up in a home with a lot of domestic violence, a lot of just chaos, right? And my nervous system ended up being wired to conform to that chaos. How do we survive? How does the nervous system survive? It goes into high sympathetic tone because that's what the body's doing to protect us in that moment, right?
Yeah.
The fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is the way of us dealing with a parent or parents that are not attuned to us. And how do we now, unfortunately, attune to them so we can survive? So we make sure that we have a roof over our head and food on the table. So when my nervous system was developing, it was just in a constant state of this chaos and tension. So very early on, probably around 10, 11, 12 years old, entered the psychotherapy world, ultimately became, as a patient myself, seeing a therapist, ultimately became really, really depressed, anxious. I had severe germophobia, OCD, eating disorder stuff. I felt like it was everything. It was everything. I couldn't function. Got to the point where I broke down. I stopped going to school. And of
Mm.
course, the magic pill of an SSRI was sold to me. And that's when it all started, right? So I started on the SSRIs, and then you know how it goes from there. They add the benzodiazepines. So I was on Xanax on top of the SSRIs, and I would take these drugs, and I would have awful side effects. So I think I had tried almost every antidepressant that was on the market at the time. Uh, you know, then I couldn't sleep. I had chronic insomnia, so I was going on all the sleep medications, and then I was getting stimulants for binge eating disorder, and it just went on and on. So it got to the point, fast forward, I go to social work school, I graduate social work school, I end up working in Bellevue Hospital in the inpatient psych unit, the psychiatric emergency room, the mobile crisis team, and I am on 4 psychiatric medications. I can barely function. And no joke, even though it sounds funny, I thought I was going to be a patient there. I thought
Oh
I was
my
going to end
God.
up in the psych ER myself. And for those who don't know, Bellevue is the flagship for the New York City public hospital system. So we are working with the most mentally ill, violent, dangerous, mostly underserved homeless population in New York City and sometimes the world because, everyone comes to New York City from all around the world. And if they're having a psychotic episode, where do they end up? Bellevue. So that really is where I was stuck, as you said, being a patient in the system. And ultimately by really a series of right place and right time. I became a personal trainer at my gym while I was working at Bellevue. I got exposed to functional neuroscience and holistic practices, Eastern medicine, functional medicine, and I started working with my own practitioners, and my nervous system started changing, and I was starting to get off these medications that I had struggled to get off of for years. And the psychiatrists they're so good at putting you on, but they're not very good at taking you off. And I said to myself, oh my God, I need to study this so I can do this for other people, so I can help others, free themselves from what they think is this lifelong bondage to medications. And that's what I do. That's what I do in my practice now. I have people come to see me who want to get off medication, who want to just avoid medication altogether, who want to rewire their nervous systems. And I always give the disclosure of I'm not a medical doctor, right? Legally, I cannot tell anyone what to do with their medications. But what we do is we make sure we get you healthier, we get you feeling better, and then we collaborate with your psychiatrist on the titration process to get down. So it makes it a more successful, sustainable, efficient process along the way, because as we know, unfortunately, these medications, the way they work on our brains, we become dependent on them. So getting off is really challenging. And a lot of people struggle. They struggle to get off. They end up going back on. We want to make that process as smooth as possible and make it long lasting.
So what was do you remember the catalyst for you? Was there a moment or like a chapter in your life that you can look back where you had the awareness for the first time that you were going to transform?
Yes, I was sitting in my first functional neurology class. So I studied a program out in Arizona called Z Health with a guy named Dr. Eric Cobb. And I wasn't even a personal trainer yet. I went to someone who became my mentor later on, the director of personal trainers at my gym. And I said, I want to be a personal trainer. And he said, go to this class and then we can talk. So I show up to the class. It's in New York City. And I know nothing about neurology. I know nothing about anatomy. I don't really know anything about movement patterns. I just went to social work school. That was it. I just finished social work school and now working in the hospital. And I'm sitting there in this class and I'm literally sobbing the entire time, thinking to myself, this is the biggest load of BS I've ever heard, hokey pokey crap, or it's going to completely transform me. And I took a chance on it completely transforming me. And it did. And I don't like to take dogmatic views of things. I don't think there's one size fits all. I don't think there's one right way to heal. But that education at that time is what I needed to start to change things in my body and rewire my mindset. And it really launched the rest of the education that the education journey I've been on and continue to go on, and studying at different institutes and with different people and things like that. So that was a game-changing moment for me.
What was it about it? And it's fitness, right?
So what it is functional neuroscience is a brain-targeted approach to pain reduction and performance improvement. So what we're doing is it's for a lot of fitness.
Oh, so the guy at the gym told you to go take this class, and it was a functional neuroscience class. Okay, got it.
Yes. Sorry if that was not clear. He said to me, if you want to be a personal trainer, go take this class. And yes, it was a class for movement professionals. So yes,
got it.
Absolutely. So
that was good advice.
It was great advice because the gym that I worked at was basically the hub of trainers who studied this in all of New York City. So a lot of these trainers were Czech practitioners and they were functional neurology practitioners. So they're really, really intelligent personal trainers, really amazing. And what this training does is we're basically looking at all functions of the nervous system. So we're looking at how do the eyes work? How do the vestibular system work? How do the receptors on your skin work? How's your breathing patterns? Making sure that everything is working in an integrated way so the body can feel safe and perform at a better level. And this program is actually really cool. It's basically neuroperformance. I have colleagues who are coaches for Olympic teams in Europe who are using these programs, implementing the things that we learn in those classes to make their athletes run faster, jump higher, lift heavier. And it's really, really magical stuff. And it's really what Dr. Cobb, my instructor, would call the science of hope. Because if you can do a drill, an exercise, and instantly transform someone's nervous system in that moment, and they can feel better, they can touch their toes without back pain, they can run a little bit faster, they can lift a little bit heavier. How incredible is that? Because you've just taught your brain that you can do a rep at a different level or pain free or whatever it is than you've ever been able to before. So even if it doesn't stick long term right there and then, we can teach the brain what is possible. And then we can work to start to rewire the brain to get you there on a more regular, consistent level.
I love that. That resonates with me. I talk about this all the time. Everybody who knows me knows that part of my healing journey involved hot yoga. And the reason why that resonates with me is because it was about my senses and my sensory experience.
Yes.
Because I also, like you, grew up in a very chaotic, very anxious, lots of ancestral trauma. I
Mhm.
think we have the same Ashkenazi Jewish
Yes,
background,
I was
right? Like
just
a
gonna
lot
say.
of neurosis, right? Like that pattern is unhealthy. And thank God that we are here breaking that generational pattern. But,
Absolutely.
our parents didn't know how to pay attention to those subtle details.
Mhm.
Like you said, they didn't know how to attune to because they were in fight or flight, right? They were in danger a lot and that was passed down.
Absolutely.
So they didn't know how to attune to those subtle details of life, of reality, of our experience. And so when I started this practice of being uncomfortable in a hot room and feeling my muscles and things stretch and move and burn and the heat and all this stuff, and I had really great teachers that didn't know about the functional neurology in the way that you're describing it, like not at that level, but they knew enough to know that good yoga requires the simultaneous cognition of effort
Mhm.
and release. Right? It's
Yes.
written in the sutras. It's written in the sutras thousands of years ago in Sanskrit. It's called stiram and sukham. It's like the definition of yoga because if you're not doing that, it's something else. It's maybe beneficial, but it's not yoga, right? It's just simultaneous awareness that you're engaging in something and letting go of something else. And why this unlocked higher levels awareness for me was because there would be subtle cues to soften the face or
Mm.
notice the skin on the small of your back or feel the stretch on the soles of the feet, right? So it's like while you're doing these other things with your body, making these shapes, your attention was being directed to either feel something or let go of something or engage something like simultaneously, like having these experiences all
Yes.
at once. So it started to bring awareness to the fact that, oh, I can actually feel these things and do it in a way where I'm regulating my breath and also feel safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what it's
And that
about.
changed everything for
It
me.
changes everything.
It was like that for me was, oh, I can control my experience.
Yes. Yes. And that's what it's about, right? If I can have my patients leave therapy understanding that pain and uncomfortable, quote, uncomfortable emotions are a natural part of life, that we can't have the happy and pleasant and joy and all those really lovely, amazing emotions that we always want without also experiencing
The
pain and suffering,
rage,
grief.
like
Yes,
that rage.
this is what makes us human. This is part of our existence. But they understand that they can feel these emotions. They're not going to kill them. They're not going to die from
Right.
them, and they can work through it. I mean, my patient yesterday said it was a huge breakthrough. She said, Elyse, it's not that the anxiety has gone away yet. It's that I can better handle it, and I'm not afraid of
Capacity.
it. And
Capacity
I
for
know
that, right? Like building the capacity for the discomfort is literally everything. And we're
everything.
walking around so fragile. That's amazing that your patient had that breakthrough because I so many people are, I mean, I hate to say it because it sounds like such a dig on society, but we're freaking fragile.
We're so fragile, and our entire culture has been created around suppressing and avoiding feeling discomfort. You look at the opioid
Yep,
epidemic, right?
I
And
know.
the now the antidepressant epidemic and the ADHD, the stimulant ADHD epidemic. And I'm not saying that we those things don't have a time and a place. I think people hear, oh,
Right.
Elyse is anti-medication. I'm not anti-medication. What I am is anti have you exhausted all the other options
Correct. Yeah,
before doing
same.
this?
Yeah, it's like, you can't just throw that at people without giving them the opportunity to actually heal and
Hmm.
empower them because that will limit their ability to ever do that. That's the
Absolutely.
tragedy. That's the tragedy.
That's
It's
a
like, well,
tragedy.
the pain is there as the teacher. So if you're just escaping the pain, then you're not actually getting the divine lesson of why do I feel this way in the first place? What do I need to become in order to fulfill my
Exactly.
purpose?
Yes, yes. It's the mindset shift. It's why is this happening to me versus what lesson am I here to learn from this experience? And that
Mm-hmm.
changes everything when you can go through life. And I had to rewire my mind to think that way because
Yeah, me too.
yeah, because when you're living in a constant state of fear and your body feels under threat and you're in survival, what's happening? The brain is wired for survival. So what does it do? It looks for threat. It's
Yeah.
taking in information and going,
Yeah.
what's dangerous? What's not safe? Do I know what's going to happen next? And when the brain doesn't feel ready to, it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel ready for attack or whatever it is, we're just going to constantly only be seeking out the negative. So when you can rewire your nervous system, and this is far beyond just the functional medicine, the functional neuroscience training I have, because it goes more into somatic work and inherited family trauma work and the stuff I learned at the Czech Institute. And so,
Like
right, and
all
on
of
and
it.
on, all of it. But you wire your brain for abundance. And instead of viewing things as, oh, of course, this is happening to me again, right? Why me? Poor me. It's, wow, this is a huge opportunity for growth and leveling up right now. And it might
Yeah.
suck, but
Yeah.
on the other end, it's going to be pretty magical and powerful. And this happens all the time when I work with patients and I'm doing the somatic work and we finally get to a place where they are ready to feel things. And I say, this is going to be the hardest, most unpleasant, shittiest, I'm sorry, I'm cursing. Are we cursing? Is it
Yeah.
okay? I don't know. Okay.
Do it. Yeah.
Shittiest experience you will ever have. And it's going to feel effing awful. But I promise you on the other end, and it might take weeks, it might take months, on the other end, you will be superhuman because you will not be afraid to feel.
Mm. Mm.
And that's the best gift I could give them. If they can walk away with that, I've done my job,
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
equipped
And
for
what a
life.
special gift. Yeah.
Whatever's
What a
going to come their way,
special
they know that they can handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I am in some ways jealous of people that are just going through that for the first time, because the first time that you experience that aha moment, the first time that you experience that breakthrough of your own power within your experience, when you have
Mhm.
choice about your perspective of what's happening to you, is such a radical experience. And it never happens like, yes, there's like more spiritual awakenings along the way. We're always learning things. We're always building
Yes.
capacity. But that very first time, that very first like massive breakthrough is so life shifting and
Mhm.
amazing and delicious that I'm almost to some degree jealous of people, because like that happened for me a long time ago. And
Yes.
it was just like, I was so in love with the possibility of life. Not that I'm not now, but it was the newness of it was really magical and special. So the fact that you're able to give that to
Absolutely.
people is, yeah, so special. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure there's a lot of details inside of that we might get into later, but I want to know, like, when you're working with people, I think this is really important for people. It's like, where do you see people get stuck, and what are the things that you wish everybody knew in order to overcome that?
Mm,
Probably a lot of things, but like, what
yeah.
are like the top three?
I think the biggest thing is going into our earlier conversation we opened is the belief to heal. Right? If you don't trust and believe that you are wired to grow and change and heal, right? The body is so intuitively intelligent. You fall and scrape your knee, your skin actually heals over it. It's
It like
amazing what the body.
grows back together,
Yeah,
like by itself. Yeah.
it's incredible what the body does. And people get stuck in this, is it going to happen? And that shift is
Doubt, you mean?
yeah, to make that shift into it is going to happen, just a matter of when and how. That's the
Mm,
biggest obstacle people face, because I really do believe that our ability to heal is going to have the biggest impact on whether we heal or not. And I do see people come in at all level, all varying degrees of motivation and willingness. I think the other biggest obstacle is, are you ready and willing and able to do the work? Because this is not easy work to do. Therapy, I like to make therapy fun and lighthearted, and we laugh,
I
and
know.
and
It's
we
great
and I
about
do
that.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we make art and we dance and we do movement and we go outside, and I do a lot of fun things. We do exposure therapy, but at the end of the day, without resistance there is no change. So if you're not willing to push the weights, you're not willing to face that resistance, then you're not really going to grow and change as much as you're capable of doing. So I would say those are probably two of the biggest obstacle is the mindset, right? Do I believe I can do it? And am I able and willing to put the work in? And I get it that not everyone is always in that moment ready. They're not always ready. And sometimes, things happen to us in, as woo as it sounds, divine timing. We're not
Yeah.
always ready to level up, and we needed that lesson that happened 2 years ago in order to prepare for today and be ready to get there. So those are the two biggest things I would say are the obstacles for people that stop them from really being able to push through and make change.
And then other than trusting the fact that people will arrive at the readiness and willingness on their own time, if you're working with people to get there, what are some of the things that you can do with them to help them get to that point?
Like they come in and they're not actually ready to start making that
Yeah.
change. It's about creating safety. So, and rapport and connection and trust. And I see this because I've had patients come in. I have one patient. Oh, we have such a connection. We actually meet multiple times a week. So it's intense. It's intense therapy when you're meeting with someone 2-3 times a week. And I was really getting frustrated because I was pushing and pushing, and I was like, come on, we got to do this somatic work. We got to do this thing. And I was getting a lot of pushback, and it was actually rupturing rapport. And we would talk about that a lot. And I was like, you know what, Elyse, chill out on it and focus on just helping this client feel the connection and feel safe with me. And quite frankly, last week we had a breakthrough where she was able to actually sit down and do this work. And I was thrilled. I was so excited that we got there, but I realized that if I had kept pushing to the level that I was, I don't think we would have gotten there this quickly. So it's about building that trust and connection. And I think that no matter who the practitioner is that you're working with, whether they are a medical doctor, a dentist, a yoga instructor, a therapist, if you don't have that connection and sense of safety and trust and see that they're just as invested in your treatment as you are in yourself, it's really hard. It's really hard to move forward. So that's the biggest thing. And it can be a frustrating process. It could be a frustrating process for me, especially juggling this balance between psychotherapy and coaching, because I have such a strong coaching training and education and background. So I tend to lean more into that than the psychotherapy. And I have to remember to go back into the psychotherapy and the nurturing and loving and looking at, the past and what's coming up from there. So that would be the biggest thing to help people get there. And then things like this, listening to hope. I have people read Joe Dispenza. I have people watch videos on Wim Hof, and I have them listen to stories of hope and determination and growth. And it's to start to actually see that things are possible. So
I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's the 5-minute mile or the 4-minute mile. I don't know why I can never remember how many minutes.
I can't remember either.
5-minute mile, maybe. I don't know why I can't remember, but it's that, right? It's that analogy is that like once it appears to be possible for others, then it feels more possible for you, and that unlocks that ability even within the collective, which is why I think it's so important to be having conversations like this.
Yeah.
If here you are, like, thriving and doing well, still on your journey, but thriving and doing well and serving others, showing that it is in fact possible to come from a very dark place, a very, very dark place. Did you ever have suicidal thoughts?
Oh, all the time. I never acted on them in a way that was that would actually hurt myself or end my life, but I would just fall apart throughout high school, throughout college, grad school, where I just didn't see the point anymore, and I couldn't get them out. It's scary. It's scary. It's upsetting. I felt like I could barely, I felt like I was drowning in an ocean and my head was just above water most of the time, but it felt like the waves just kept crashing over and I couldn't keep it together, and I was just falling apart constantly and having breakdowns, and it's not fun. It's not fun to feel that way. And you look at other people who are like, looked like they have their shit together, and it's like, damn, will I ever get there? What does that feel like? And constant state of panic. I mean, it's interesting to look back and realize I don't have my heart beating out of my chest 24/7 anymore. Because that's what it was like.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Just hyper vigilant all the time. And the toll
Yes.
that that takes on your immune system
Mm-hmm.
is also just like tremendous. I mean, that's part of how I ended up with autoimmune disease because I was
Totally.
not so much dealing with the mental health issues that you had, but like deep insecurity, like no ability to speak up for myself whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
like zero self-worth, like body dysmorphia, didn't know how to look at myself, it was just completely disconnected. And
Yes.
that level of anxiety and like fear of what's going to happen, like always waiting for the shoe to drop kind of thing, it just destroys your health. Like it's
Absolutely.
so bad for you to live like that. And
Absolutely.
it hurts.
It hurts. It hurts. And,
It hurts.
because I do feel like my body has, it still has a long way to go from healing the detoxing process of these medications. Even though the majority of them I'm not actively taking them on a day-to-day basis, right? There's lingering effects. So it's been
Yeah.
a long, especially Xanax. I was on Xanax daily for 17 years. That,
Oh my God.
yeah, that really impacts your cognition and thinking
Yeah.
clearly. And that's why I take my health so seriously, as I know you do too, because I I've realized that in order to, I actually wake up, I wake up feeling really crappy every day. And I want to be fully transparent with the audience that even though I got off the SSRIs and the stimulants and the benzodiazepines, I still am on a very, very baby dose of sleep medication. So small that I take the smallest pill and I have to cut it into quarters, which is really hard to do because it's such a tiny pill to begin with. And I have insomnia, and it's something I've worked through, I've had since I was a child. And a lot of it, I think, stems from the trauma of not feeling safe at night to go to sleep and having to be hypervigilant in the middle of the night. And,
Yeah.
everyone always wants to offer their 2 cents on, oh, have you tried melatonin? Have you tried this? Have you gotten
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
sun?
Yeah.
Where are the blue blockers? And it's like, okay, I appreciate it. Yes, I've tried it all. I've seen a lot of sleep specialists. And I know that there's work to do. Like we said, it's a process. But so I'm taking that. I don't, it's like I don't sleep or I take it. I don't feel good when I wake up. And it's a process to feel good. But I also realize it's a choice, right? I get up, I go outside, I do my breath work with the sun in my eyes. I take a cold shower. I make sure that my nutrition, when I'm in my house, is top notch. I order a lot of food from a farm. I was so excited because when we connected and I saw you're making amazing raw ice cream, and I'm like, oh yes, it's the best. I love it. You were making chocolate and vanilla. What were you making this week?
Yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Yeah. So, my partner's son has Crohn's disease.
Hmm.
And I think, did you know that?
I think we talked
Um,
about this because when we were talking about raw dairy previously, it might have come up.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so he was on, medication. He's not on medication anymore.
He's
And
right.
part of that transition, yeah, part of that transition, well, he was unhappy with it because it like helped in the beginning, but then because he was in a really, desperate sort of crisis situation, but
Yeah.
then it had like diminishing returns, right? Where the side effects were worse than the benefits he was getting, and he was nauseous and not able to eat, which was counterproductive because you need to be able to eat when you have Crohn's because, you need to gain weight. And so part of the transition process and the healing process has been raw, very well sourced A2 dairy. And in order
Yeah.
to make it really enjoyable for him, because he's a teenager, it's like, well, who doesn't like ice cream, right? So we started with, I got like a small Cuisinart one, just like an affordable one. We got on Amazon. It was like $59 or something. Just really simple ingredients,
Yeah.
raw egg yolks, raw dairy, maple syrup to sweeten it, not too much, right? A little bit of sea salt, vanilla, and he loves it. And so it's like I couldn't keep up with demand, and so now I have two machines going at once.
No way. You
And
got an ice cream
yeah,
factory over there. I love it.
yeah, literally, yeah. And so if I have two going at once, I'm like, okay, well, I might as well make a chocolate. You just put some raw cacao in there and
Oh,
vanilla, and sometimes I mix it up with like a mint chip or whatever. But it's great because it's so nourishing. And
so
that
nourishing.
microbiology in the raw dairy and the K2 and all of these nutrients that we're not getting in the sad American diet has been really, really nourishing for him and for me and for all of us. And it's delicious.
It's so
It's delicious.
good.
It's basically weight gainer though. Like it's working for him. Like so, you got to be careful and not to go overboard.
Use moderation
But
if you don't
it's
want to gain
so
weight.
good. Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
good.
It's
I get it from my farm. I get the raw. It is, and we had talked about this. You were like, buy the ice cream maker, and I said, I live in a one-bedroom apartment in New York
yeah.
City.
You're
I
like it
have
won't
no
fit.
room for any more. Any
It's
more
not big and it's
appliances?
kind of worth it. Or you could just come visit me and,
Oh,
we'll make it together.
1000%. And we're gonna enjoy some ice cream. But it is the one I get from the farm because it's, they're using the raw dairy, the raw egg yolks that are amazing quality, the organic maple syrup, and this ice cream. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. The flavors are incredible. So I can't even imagine what yours is like because you're making it in your own kitchen, so it's even better.
It's
But
so the same.
these things matter, right? And it's
They do.
they really do. And I'm also, it's taken me a long time to get here, but I'm also about balance. And I live in Queens. Last night I went to Jackson Heights. It's the most diverse neighborhood in the world. I love going there and exploring food. And I got really famous taco truck last night, and then my neighbor and I went for Indian food, and it was incredible. And I love having fun and exploring and trying new things, and at the same time I know my limits and what my body can tolerate.
Right.
And when I'm in my home, which I'm cooking most of my meals, it is really, really nutrient dense, high quality food that I know works well for me and my body. And these things matter. And for me, these things, these daily things, the sunlight, the breath work, the movement, I take them as seriously as I would taking a pill. You don't
Yes.
skip your medication, right? Theoretically, if you're being prescribed a pill, this is my medication. This is what my body needs to feel more human. And really, at the end of the day, what is health? I think health is just getting back to being human. Getting
Amen.
outside, getting your feet in the grass, eating the food that we're meant to eat, having the connections that we're meant to have. And this is what you're about. This is what Alexis is about, right? Getting outside. I try to take my patients when it's beautiful out. My office is right near a park in Manhattan, Madison Square Park. I say, let's go outside and put our feet in the grass during our session. Let's go for a walk. Let's go get nutrient foods or dense foods, or let's even make nutrient dense foods together. I've had people here and we cook
That's
together.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Because I want them to understand this is not so hard to do. It's actually not so hard to implement. And that's also actually, I think, speaking of obstacles, I think people think it's way harder to take care of your body than it really is.
But there's a sense of overwhelm, like, there's so much
Yeah.
to do, and how do I do this, and how do I implement it?
Exactly.
Where do I
Or
start?
I don't have time to cook. And I'm like, I will literally grill a burger from my farm in 5 minutes with some raw cheese, you
Yeah,
know, make an egg quickly on the skillet and throw in some veggies on the side or raw veggies or whatever. And I have a meal in under 10 minutes. And then I
yeah.
eat it in 10 minutes. And that's a 20-minute process to now have an amazing, delicious, quick meal.
Well, we're
It's
so addicted to the overstimulation and like the hyper palatable foods and like
yeah,
the complexity in our modern world that everything has to have like this multi-dimensional sensory experience or it's like boring. So we're desensitized to what's actually real.
yeah,
Real food is simple.
simple,
Real food is
simple.
simple and it's the most delicious.
It's so my friend comes over here. I have a friend who lives on the corner from me, and I cook her these. She loves it. I cook her these burgers from my farm, which are great. Actually, price wise, they're great because it's one of the most inexpensive things that they sell, and they're ready to go. The beef patties, right from the farm. I cook her this with an egg from the farm with some veggies, and she goes, Elise, I feel so good after I come over and eat
Mm,
that burger. And I said,
yeah.
yeah, because you are eating such nutrient dense foods. This is how you're supposed to feel after you eat. This
Yeah,
is
it
amazing.
is. Yeah, not like
Yeah,
sick and depleted and bloated and with a migraine and I have to lay down and
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, and I
Exactly.
mean, I feel like there's just not enough. I mean, there is, more information available now and
Mhm.
more awareness about it now, but still nowhere to the degree enough in the mental health space around the
Right.
connection between the gut. I mean, it's still like it's 2025 and the fact that like we're still not completely socially aware of this at all levels and that
Right.
some people still don't know is just it's really unacceptable. I mean, we have to do better as a collective because so many people that I know who struggle with their mood, just let's straight up say just mood in
Mood.
general,
Yes,
right?
totally.
Yeah, but they don't connect what they put in their mouths to what comes out of their mouth, you know?
Exactly. Oh, that's a good
It's
one. That's a good one. Don't connect with
yeah,
what you put in with what
yeah,
comes out.
yeah, it's
Totally.
you really have to pay attention to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And and then you could dive deeper, right? Not just the gut, but our breathing patterns and our
Of
access to,
course.
how are we getting out there? And this is what I'm so excited. I'm starting to finally teach this to other practitioners, other mental health practitioners in large rooms of hundreds, or even, last week, a few thousand people that I was able to teach this to, and I talked about nutrition and the connection between the mind and the gut. And I, I just can't wait for there to be a shift in obviously the whole medical system, but especially mental health, because what are we doing? The reason I love this work is because I was stuck in psychotherapy for so long and nothing was really changing. I was
Yeah.
doing the CBT and the psychodynamic work and all this stuff, and not to poo poo it, because some of it does work. And I think if people's, presenting complaints are very surface level, they can help. But is it a Band-Aid? I think it's more of a Band-Aid,
Yeah.
that we're not actually digging deeper and really doing the repair. And then the body feels more human. And what happens? It starts to thrive. It starts to
Yeah.
have gratitude for what it, what comes its way every day. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a really, really beautiful thing.
Gratitude for just having a body, for just being
Yes.
able to like walk and move and breathe and digest food and information and see things and hear things and be functional. Like,
Mhm.
what a blessing that is to not be taken for granted and to like actually really feel grateful for it. And that frequency of gratitude changes everything. It's like you were saying, it's like
Yes.
if you're in fear, all you see is things to be afraid of. But if
Yes.
you're in gratitude, all you see are more things to be grateful for. It's the opposite.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really
Absolutely.
is the opposite. I love that you're teaching other practitioners this. And I was going to ask you that, like, what do you see happening in the space and how do you see the future of like mental health changing? I mean, other than you actually out there as a change agent.
I know. I was like, I have to go do it. So as you know, 2 weeks ago, I spoke to the mental health department of the Air Force. So I was able to go. They had a big week-long conference in Orlando, and I spoke for 2 hours there, provided continuing education for the psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists, substance abuse counselors of the Air Force. And then not even 48 hours later, talked to all 2,000 social workers of the New York City Department of Education. And that was 5 hours of continuing education content. So for me, it's about really teaching them, you got to get the basics with your patients and clients, right? We got to make sure you're eating well, moving well, breathing well, sleeping well, that you have good connections, that you're getting out in the sun, and the impact of that, right? That you can have someone come in with a pretty significant presenting complaint, but sometimes if you just fix their breathing and nutrition, the intensity or severity of that issue can actually drastically reduce without even addressing the issue itself.
And
You
you see
know?
that in practice regularly.
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time. Just get someone feeling a little bit better in their body, and the issue drastically reduces most of the time. It just makes sense, right? It's like we're
Yeah.
reducing threat, we're increasing a sense of safety, and it's like, oh, this phobia I had, or this anxiety I had, or this depression I had might actually lift up a little bit because my body now feels a lot healthier. So I don't need to have these patterns and this emotional pain that's my teacher, right? The emotional pain is my teacher, whether it's physical or emotional. My brain doesn't need this input constantly now anymore to start to make change because I'm actually making the change.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And then there's
yeah.
momentum in the positive direction. You feel better, and then
Yes.
you're inspired by how you feel better, so then you want to do more, and then it just keeps going, right?
Yeah,
There's this like feed
yeah.
forward loop of like improving yourself, and you're like, "Oh, this is working. So I want to do
Exactly.
more of the thing that feels good."
Yes, yes. And then you start to get into the dream, right? Paul Chek talks about this. And I know Alexis has talked about this a lot because we're both Chekies and we're both Czech fans. But, what is your dream? What do you want to go pursue? Because now you actually have the ability to go pursue the things that matter to you because you have your
Yeah,
health. You don't have to focus on being a full-time patient anymore. You
right.
now
It's
can,
such a burden.
oh,
It
it's
like
such a
burdens your
burden.
energy. Such
Oh,
a burden, right? And it
so
sucks your
much.
life force. But yeah, once you have that feeling of like, oh, I can actually produce, right? Like I can produce, I've liberated this energy
Hmm.
and now I can create. I can come from a place of, creative energy, right?
Yes.
Rather than the survival centers, right? Like we move up in the chakras to those higher centers where we can actually express our truth and like create art or meaning in the world, right? Like that's
Yes.
when for me there's that inflection point of like just really being connected to the divine and like purposeful and in your heart. versus like up in your head and analytical all the time.
Yes, totally, totally. And there is nothing more magical. And I experienced it after these two speaking gigs that I had the other week. There's nothing more magical than being so excited to go to bed early so you could wake up early and go
I
achieve your
know.
purpose. I mean, I had to be downtown in the financial district at 7:30 in the morning to go teach these social workers. Let me tell you, I have a crazy morning routine. No one can pay me enough to be anywhere at 7:30 in the morning. Okay, I was at the gym at 5 a.m. I was like, I gotta wake up at 4. I'm gonna go run, I'm gonna go to the gym for 30 minutes. I'm gonna go in my sauna. I'm gonna do my thing so I feel good to present, right? Because I'm now going to be standing in front of 2,000 people. And I felt so in my element for the first time. It was like I hit the nail on the head. This is what I'm meant to do. And
Yeah.
it felt incredible. And it's taken a long time to get there. I remember I went to holistic lifestyle coaching too. This was probably a year and a half ago. I was out there in California at the Czech Institute and I was having a great time. And I remember waking up Monday morning to go to the San Diego airport to fly back to New York. And I had this deep dread in my body. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so confused about what my dream is. I don't know what it
Oh,
is. And I kind of went into a little bit of a depression for a few months because I just didn't, and I use that term lightly, depression. I actually hate pathologizing it. I'm like, I had sadness. I had sadness for a few months because also there's nothing wrong with sadness. If it's debilitating and you can't function, different story. But I was sad for a few months and I felt lost. And I also, once again, think this is part of the human experience that our purpose and passion and interests can change and we need to regroup and figure out what is it that I need and slow down. And that was part of the process. But I I felt confused and I felt lacking that purpose and it was really hard. And then I eventually crawled out of it and I would do my visualizations every day. I do this thing where when I'm really in a really dark place, I just spend 60 seconds in the sun and I just imagine what it would feel like to feel the excitement and joy and peace that I want to feel. And I sit there and I go, okay, maybe it's really hard for me to experience this right now on a day-to-day basis, but let me just teach my body what is possible for 60 seconds and remind my body I can find this again. So I would do that in those moments, right? And I would do a lot of exercises and I work with Angie Check. She's my coach, Paul Check's wife, and we're doing a lot of exercises around your dream and what is your purpose and things like that. And eventually it picked back up, right? Eventually it picked back up. But I'm telling you, when you find that thing and you feel healthy and you can go out there and get it, oh my gosh, there's no better reason to live than to pursue
right.
what you love and what you're meant to do.
Right. Yeah, I resonate with that so much. Especially because, Japa Health is like, that is for me what you're
Mhm.
describing. And
Totally.
in the beginning, when I first was like, okay, I'm all in on doing this. Like, I'm all in on building Japa Health was right around the time that I was fixing my sleep, which was like the final frontier for me in my healing journey, because
Mhm.
I had done a lot of work on my autoimmune disease and chronic pain and mindset and all the other issues that I had around shame and insecurity, anxiety, but I still had issues sleeping and I would call myself a night owl and that there's no such thing, right? That was just dysfunctional, patterns, and a disconnect between the rhythms of nature and my circadian rhythm, which I was fixing. And so it was like this parallel for me of when I was really pouring my heart into building Japa Health and also forcing myself to get up early because that's how I fixed my sleep at night was like forcing myself to get up
Mm,
early and go outside.
yeah.
But then I started falling in love with that because I couldn't wait to go to bed because I couldn't wait to wake up in the
Yes,
morning.
yes,
I
exactly.
also I also didn't have a lot of success meditating in the morning, and I want to talk to you about this because I think it says on your Instagram somewhere that you hate meditating or something. So I want to
Oh,
talk to you about
it's
that.
my
But
yes, yes. We'll talk.
yeah, that's like a thing for you. But I wasn't having, and I felt like an imposter because I was teaching meditation and I was teaching yoga and I owned a facility, like I owned a big center with tens of thousands of students. And I wasn't really finding that meditation in the morning was beneficial for me or that I could stick with it or enjoyed it, whatever, right? So I switched my meditation practice to the evening and that was a complete game changer for me. So I would like look forward to my meditation, right? So all day I would
Yes.
like look forward to getting into that like amazing space of like that, fifth dimension or wherever it is that you go, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then taking that with me into like delta waves and into sleep
Mm,
so I could get up early and actually use all of that juicy creative energy and inspiration to apply it to my creation, right? And so
yes,
that was like a really fun time for me in my life also because it was the first time that I was waking up feeling refreshed in my whole life.
that's amazing. That's
And it
incredible.
was like around the time that I was 40 years old. So it took me a long time to get there.
It takes a long time and it's a constant process. That's the thing. And that's what I always want to reiterate to people is, there's there's always going to be days that you wake up not feeling great. And that's just part of life. The goal is not 100% every day. You're not going to feel 100% every day, but can you show up for yourself every day?
Yeah.
Can you do the things
Yeah.
that you know are going to get you feeling a little bit better? Maybe you go do some movement, but it's not intense movement. Maybe you're right. So it's just it's accepting and understanding and knowing what works great for your body and knowing that, I might go out for tacos and Indian food tonight and not feel great waking up in the morning, but I really enjoyed it and I got to spend time with a good friend, and really
Yeah.
so it's
Those things are
yeah,
healthy too. Like
absolutely.
living life and having experiences and like being overly restrictive, I think is a problem,
Right.
especially in the world now where we have like so much content online about health and wellness that
Yeah.
people can sometimes take it too far.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And that's why I know you had mentioned the DJing that I started going to DJ school last summer because and I want to go back to the meditating thing eventually, but
We will.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I really have always struggled with play. I really always struggled with playing and I think it's a product of my childhood and the strictness and living in fear, right? You can't be in fear and play at the same time. Play is
Correct.
creativity. It's about letting go. It's about just having fun and doing things without really an intentional outcome. So I've always been into DJing. I worked at a big radio station in New York City during college, and I had a radio show in college. So I've always been into music and DJing in that way and dancing. And I've always noticed, I've never been a dancer, but I just always noticed how good I feel when I dance. It's just so fun. It's just moving. It just feels so good. So I finally took the plunge and I've been researching it for years, DJ school. So I finally took the plunge and started DJ school at Scratch Academy in the summer last year. And for me, it was the first time in so long that I was having so much fun. I loved it. I
Yeah.
just wanted to just practice my DJing all the time. And it really was so lighthearted for me. And part of that balance of enjoying life that you mentioned is finding things that bring you joy and fun. And
Yeah.
there's a creative component to it because I get to be creative with what music I mix and how I mix it and reading an audience, the people that are dancing and being creative with what songs and genres you want to play and see what gets them going and what was awesome is when I taught to the social workers of the New York City Department of Education, they had me DJ the breakfast registration hour before we actually taught for 5 hours of continuing education.
So you DJ'd like the orientation and
Yeah.
then you spoke.
And then I spoke for five
So
hours.
you
Yes.
but you got to set the energy for the whole day, which is
I
actually pretty amazing.
It was awesome. I mean, we're talking 8 a.m. in the morning. I am DJing. People are eating their breakfast. They're signing up, they're registering. And already people are coming up to me and being like, I love your music. This is awesome. And they're starting to realize that I'm also going to be the presenter for the day. So that was really fun
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Right. And we ended up, such great energy just to start the day off. And also these are my people. I was a city social worker for New York City for so long and they're city social workers. So we're already jiving and connecting in that way. And then the end of the day totally took an unscripted turn where we got off topic of what I had planned and we got into the conversation of pretty much exactly what you and I are talking about. How we were talking about behavior change and we were talking about how do you overcome this belief that I can't do it or I don't know how to do it. And I talked about embodying really almost somebody different, like this alter ego.
Yeah.
How do you start to
Yeah, yeah,
embody
yeah.
the person who you want to become? And we talked about play. We got into this whole conversation about play because I thought to myself, let's talk about how people play because then you can use that to start to about how do you play with your mindset? How do you start to shift your
Yeah.
mindset to do something fun? So then I said, I actually got into DJing because that was a form of play for me and it was so helpful for my creativity, for my fun. And I said, y'all want to have an impromptu dance party right now? And the entire room was like, yes, yes, let's
This
do
is why I
it.
love your energy so much, because only you would do that at like a
I
social worker educational
a,
event.
a full day. I mean, I had these people from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. And it was, oh my gosh, I looked at the guy who was running the event. I said, it's okay. And he goes, go for
We're
it. And
doing this.
we
Yeah.
had, I'm not kidding you, half of the people there were in a conga line doing dancing
Oh
around
my
the
God.
room. Oh my gosh. I'm still getting messages 2 weeks later. That was the
Well, I
best.
can tell you one thing, they're
Yeah.
not going to forget that
Oh,
day.
they're not
They're
going to
not
forget
going to
it.
forget.
They're not going to forget it. It's so great. I know I'm still getting messages 2 weeks later. That was the best professional development day I've ever had. I'm loving the exercises you taught us. I'm using it with my students. I mean, this is my dream, right? Because if I have the attendance, the attention of 2,000 social workers for the New York City DOE, and even if, let's say, 100 of them go back
Right.
and they each teach one student one thing that they learned that day to help regulate their nervous system, to help with their health. I feel like I won. I made
You
an impact,
did.
you
You are.
know?
You're, yes.
So
Yes.
that's what I live
Absolutely.
for. Oh my God, it was such a high. I was in such a high after that. It was
I love that.
incredible. It was incredible. So now I'm like, okay, how do I start to merge the education with the DJing and having fun and setting the energy? And that's kind of the mindset I'm having after this. But it's
Well, it's making
really,
me think about neuroplasticity, because
yeah.
something that I realized when I started to wake up, right? When I started to have these moments of like increased consciousness, because I was like sensing and perceiving myself and the environment in a greater way, I started to realize that I had been repeating the same things. Like I'd been
Mhm.
looping, and like I had these sort of patterns in my life that I was blind to, right? I was
Yeah.
blind to those patterns, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like once you start to create those new neural pathways and make
Mhm.
those new connections, that's when you realize that you can do more things like that. You're like, oh, I can break patterns.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not stuck. But you have to make that first step to do it. And when you do it in play, I actually did a podcast with Indy Rishi Singh. I think it was podcast number, I think it was number 4. And he's a neuroplasticity teacher, but he does it through laughter. And we had a Japa Health
Mm.
retreat a couple years ago where he came and did a workshop on the neuroplasticity of laughter. And I don't remember all the statistics that he gives when he does his workshop, because he weaves it all together with the laughter exercise and all of this. But he talks about, and you probably know this, it's like we learn so much faster when we're playing.
Yes. 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 Absolutely.
I
Because
forget, it's like exponentially more.
that makes so much sense because it's your your brain has reduced the threat of the learning
Yeah.
load. You know, it's I think so often our fear of doing something is so much worse than the actual thing. You know, so if
Yeah.
I'm really nervous about attending a class that I don't think I'm going to take in the information and I think I'm going to have to study really hard and it's going to be really brutal and not fun, I'm going to be freaking out about it before I do it. And then, usually people go and do the thing, right? They do the public speaking gig, they take the class, whatever it is, ask the person out, whatever it is. And it's like, oh, that actually wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. But I think with learning, and this, I struggle with this a lot because I would almost disassociate in classes, especially even
Yeah. Yeah.
my functional neurology classes. I really barely took in the information because I was under so much stress and pressure on myself to understand it, and it made me freak out. And then it just made everything I learned feel so much more complicated and difficult and challenging.
Yeah.
Whereas if I actually went in with this playful, fun mindset and I was being
Mhm.
creative and taking it less seriously, of course I would
Right.
absorb it way better, and so I with a lot of patients, I say to them, we're going to have to shift the mindset around how we approach this difficult thing.
And
Because,
over
yeah.
seriousness is a freaking disease.
Oh
It's a
my
problem.
Oh my gosh. That's
It's a
actually, yeah,
problem.
that's the biggest thing. So after my discovering the neuroscience stuff, that was the really big aha moment of, okay, I think I now can find the tools to start to shift things. But the day that my friend slash coach, Teresia, said to me, this was in the early stages of me studying this, she said, Elyse, you don't have to take everything so seriously. And I thought to myself, what? What? It was like the most life altering statement to make to me, which
Right.
sounds so silly and so simple. But from that day on, I was like, oh my gosh, I could just look at everything in such a different, fun light. So I would show up to Bellevue and, we'd be rounding in the morning with doctors. The doctors are so serious. And I'd be like, this is so funny. This is like a TV show. Oh, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
serious.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
Blah,
like
blah, blah.
change your perspective.
Yeah, change your perspective and have fun. And that shifted so much for me to be like, I don't have to take it so seriously. And then through my somatic experiencing practices, which this goes into the I Hate Meditating, the mini course that I just launched. But I worked with a somatic coach for 3 years, and gosh, it was torture because we'd spend 90 minutes meditating every week. And it was a real struggle for me because at the time, my nervous system, there was no way I could shut my mind off and go sit still and just be with my body. But that taught me that there's really no sense of urgency, unless
Oh,
it's a life or death.
say it louder.
Yeah,
You
there is
know?
no
Yeah,
sense of urgency.
yeah. I mean, especially I think from the background that we come from, and by the way, my mother was born in Brooklyn, so
Yes, I know, because we
it's
have the
like,
connection. I know,
yeah,
I
and
love it.
there's this, and I'm sure there are a lot of other people with different backgrounds that relate to this, regardless.
Yes,
But there's a certain pattern of neurosis that comes with the kind of cultural background that we
it's
come
so
from.
real. It's so real.
It's so real. It's everything is a hurry up, hurry up, hurry up.
Oh,
I could hear my mother with her Brooklyn accent, like literally in my mind right now. Hurry up, hurry up. We're gonna be late. Hurry up, hurry up. Okay. If she listens to this, she's either gonna laugh or be really mad at me because it's like so real. And so I grew up with that embedded feeling of like, oh, always like you gotta go, you
always.
gotta go, you gotta go. You could never just move with ease, which is another thing, by the way, that yoga taught me is that like I get to move at my own pace.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh my gosh. Also, just side note, the Jewish thing is so real because when a Jewish client walks into my office versus a non-Jewish client, it is just a pure night and day energy that I pick up. Like I've had patients come in and they're like, I'm experiencing anxiety for the first time because of this situation that happened. And I go, you're not Jewish, are you? And they're like, no. And I'm
You
like,
know,
okay, yeah,
you mean for
because
the first time, as if you weren't born with anxiety?
they didn't know. They didn't know. My favorite line, my one patient, he goes, I worked with him for years. He goes, Elyse, do you know I'm anxious today? And I was like, because you have nothing to be anxious about? He's like, yes, I have nothing to be anxious about. And it's making me very anxious that I have nothing to be obsessing over and I don't know what to do anymore and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oy vey, oy vey.
Oh, Bay is right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We can actually move slowly. We can actually
Yes.
have peace. We can actually have fun, but it does take
Yeah.
a bit of work to disconnect from that. It's literally wired into us.
It's so wired into us. And I get caught up in it all the time that I forget.
I,
But
yeah,
oh, yeah, go ahead. It's,
I just feel like that's like part of my entire life's work is
yes.
to free myself from in yoga we call them the samskaras, right? The grooves that like get like embedded into your spirit, right? It's like they're
Yeah.
like
Ooh.
ingrained into you, right? Yeah, I feel like that's that theme because we have what we call triggers, right? And
Yeah.
so things will trigger you back into an old pattern. And if I'm not being present, if I'm not reflecting, if I'm not doing my practices, then it's easy for me to get triggered into those like physiological patterns, right? Of
Of
like the
course.
tension and the holding, right? And the reactive nature and just over analytical about things.
Yes.
Yeah, it's trust me, I understand the Jewish thing is very real.
Oh my God, it's so real. It's so real. And then you're around your Jewish family members that are still in that, and it's very, very dysregulating for us because we're
Which
like,
is a
this is
whole
all.
other conversation about like how to have boundaries when you're going through your
Oh,
healing and
oh my
like you love
gosh.
your family or maybe you don't or some of them you do and some of them you don't or whatever. But how do you want to manage those relationships when that energy is either not healthy or just, triggering sometimes? How do you do
Exactly.
that? I
Oh,
mean, for
that's yeah.
me, for me, that was like a whole other, we could have an entire podcast about
Absolutely.
how to have those boundaries, how to speak your truth, especially when there's no ability for them to relate
Yeah.
to the things that you are discovering about yourself and what's possible, and it's basically like quantum leaping into a new frequency. Like you're living in a different frequency now. You're not on that same level anymore.
Right. Yeah. And then it's easy to get dragged back into it because
It is.
misery loves company. So it's very true. It's very,
Yeah.
very true. Yeah. And that was really eye opening to me of the right the there's that we can have fun. We don't take things so seriously. And there's no sense of urgency. Everything doesn't have to be a big deal, unless it's, of course, it's a life and death situation, right? Someone's dying and they have to go to a hospital, but rarely is that happening. And
Rarely.
And it's just constantly being in the state of panic. So a lot of the work I did in those 3 years of working with this somatic therapist was unlearning that and teaching my body, okay, you might feel like there's danger and there's threat, but right now I am okay. In this moment, I am okay. And of course, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have food on the table, if you don't have a roof over your head,
right.
like no amount of somatic work is going to change that.
Or affirmations or anything like that.
Right, right. So I don't want to be unrealistic, but for the most part, if you're someone who you do know where you're gonna get your next meal from, and you have a roof over your head, and you have people that love you, like you have what you need in that moment, and we can start to calm down the system, and that's also huge. I mean, that's huge transformation work that whether you do it through somatic experiencing or yoga or whatever it is, there's no one way to get there, which is really, really cool, really beautiful. You could do it in so many different ways that work with you, which is why the I hate meditating thing. So where that comes from is that I started working with the somatic coach for 3 years, who also actually did family constellations. So we would merge somatic work with inherited family trauma work, which was so powerful. Yeah. So talk about like the family stuff, right? The family triggering stuff and the boundaries.
Where does it show up in your body? Like, where do you feel it when it's related to a certain person? Wow, this is fascinating. Tell me more.
But even, did you ever read the book, It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin? Have you heard of this book?
No, I haven't read that book. Okay. But that resonates.
So yeah, exactly. So this therapist I worked with, actually, she was one of Mark Wolin's early mentees. So what it does is you're actually setting this thing up. It's actually supposed to be done in person with other humans representing your family members. But because I was virtual with her, and it was during COVID when people weren't doing group things like this so much, or it was harder to access them, you would do with objects. So it may be like, okay, this mug represents my mother, and I'm going to put her down somewhere on the floor that feels right for me. And this pen represents me, and I'm going to put it down somewhere that feels right for me. And we're doing this intergenerational thing where then I'm bouncing back between standing as myself, and then I'm talking to my mother, and then I go into being my mother and I talk to me, and I kind of channel my mother of what I think she might be experiencing in this conversation. And there's a lot of healing that happens in understanding where my mom's trauma is coming from before her, and how that's impacting her, and now how it's impacting me and my reactions to her. And we're using the somatic work to start to calm the reactions that might be coming up when I get triggered. So it's really, really cool. I do this a lot with patients. It's really awesome and really fun, and a lot of interesting stuff comes out of it. But so I started working with her, and we do these 90-minute long sessions, and my body did not feel safe enough to drop in. My nervous system did not feel safe enough to drop in, right? I could not get out of my thinking, over analytic, obsessing mind and go into my body. And we would just do this week after week after week. And it wasn't until at least a year into the process that I actually understood what it meant to drop into my body. I was like, oh, okay, this is what we've been talking about the entire time. But then even then I did it once, but I couldn't replicate it again for months. Yeah. And eventually we got to a place, right? When you do it enough, you eventually get there. When you're doing 90 minutes a week, sometimes twice a week, every week, eventually you got there for 3 years. And I thought to myself, there has to be a more efficient, better way to do this, because we don't all feel safe to go there, right? It's very threatening when you're someone who's maybe been in a state of freeze for a very long time to now sit still. It is very threatening.
To close your eyes,
right? This is like mimicking freeze, or you're in your head constantly to avoid feeling, because feeling feels so unsafe. So I was like, I want my patients to get here, but I don't want to torture them like I was tortured. That is, I just
I don't, and so also, like, you're thinking what's a better way.
Yeah, there has to be a better way. That's what I thought. I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. That's a little bit more pleasant. Once again, therapy is hard. It's a lot of work to change, but a little bit more pleasant. And, that they're not going to run away and never come back. And also it just feels a little bit more realistic and sustainable. And you're not pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone to the point that it's damaging or uncomfortable that you're like, I can't do this anymore. I got to get out of therapy. Because that happens, right? When the therapist pushed too hard and the patient's not ready to go there, see you later. They don't show back up. They ghost you, So
Yeah.
it's about finding that sweet spot outside of the comfort zone. That's the dosing needs to be right. And that's where I think a lot of this work is an art of how do I dose appropriately for each person. So I thought to myself, okay, I could not meditate for years and years and years. I could not sit still in my body. Forcing someone to meditate who can't sit still is going to feel not just threatening, but also really frustrating because you keep thinking to yourself, am I doing this right? Like,
It's like defeating.
It's really defeating. You're like, I'm doing this wrong. There's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I hate that word, but I'm broken. Right.
Right.
So what I did was I started to gather from the last 10 years of my education after my master's degree in the functional neuroscience at the Czech Institute in cranial sacral work and Reiki. And I studied this really interesting French modality called Wu Tai and, all these things that I've done. And I was like, okay, we're going to basically step people down. So I'm going to have these exercises that I'm going to teach them. And we're also going to assess each individual person's nervous system because not everyone's going to respond the same to each exercise. And I'm very mindful of that, is that when I'm working with someone, it's very individualized because everybody's so different. And some people are going to like certain exercises more than others. Some people's nervous systems are going to respond better to, certain exercises more than others. So I'm like, let me have an array of exercises. Let me think about all the things that I've learned in my education. And I'm going to teach these to my patients, and I'm going to teach them how to assess and reassess their nervous system. So we figure out what works for them. So we have intense breathing exercises. We have calming breathing exercises, breathing into different parts of our body. We have visual exercises. I have tools and devices and fun things like colored glasses and vagus nerve activators and all different things that they can use that are more external objects if they need more help. And I'm going to teach these to my patients, and we're going to figure out which of these tools works really well for them. Oh, I have a vibration plate in my office, so I have patients stand on the vibration plate during sessions, right? So we're figuring out what helps them just feel a little bit more in their body. Okay, just a little bit more. Okay, I can get out of my mind and I can actually be present right now in my body. So then I'm like, great. Okay, now we've gotten them into their body. Let's keep doing that. Let's just reps. Keep doing the reps of I can get into my body. I can get into my body. I don't have to necessarily feel what's happening in my body, but I can at least get out of my mind and into my body. So I'm stair-stepping them down to eventually be able to be in that stillness and to be
And are you teaching them that this is an embodiment practice? They know that that's what the objective is, right?
Yes, they do. Sometimes if they're like, I hate meditating and I'll never meditate and all that, I don't always go there of okay, one day we're going to get you to meditate. I just am like, we're just going to slowly help you feel safer. But it really is. I do teach them that it's a somatic practice and it's an embodiment practice. Yes. So that's really the whole idea behind the guide I created, because I thought to myself, I should put something out there so people who can't work one-on-one with me or for whatever reason, they can at least access some of these exercises. So I called the guide I Hate Meditating. So when people, are like, oh, okay, I hate meditating, but I also know I need to do something to regulate my nervous system. This is what they can start to use and maybe implement some of these tools and in their day-to-day life to start to get out of their head and into their body and realize that
it's a course.
It's like a mini course. It's a mini course with follow along videos. It's very short. There's just a few exercises in there, so I didn't want to overload people. But it's really my favorite exercises and my patients' favorite exercises.
Oh, that's an amazing resource.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, people that are listening to this are probably going to be like, okay, I'm firing my therapist and I'm going to go work with Elyse. But you only work with people one-on-one, right, in New York City?
Well, I'm hoping I'm actually licensed in 4 states, and I will do offer coaching. If the patient is not a super high risk person, then I can work with them outside of this 4 states I'm licensed in, which are New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Florida is one of them that you're in.
Oh, okay.
but I'm actually going to start expanding into some more group offerings. I want to do I'm putting this together this week. I want to do a 2-hour workshop on people pleasing and how to,
Yes.
yeah, which you mentioned earlier, right? Like in your kind of state of childhood stuff and how it came out. But so I'm going to put together a people pleasing workshop and hopefully launch that in the next month, of just a live workshop. And then people, if they want to, if they can't attend, they can listen to it after. And I'm going to implement some of these exercises into that workshop. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and kind of what I do, the step-by-step process I've created to work with my patients who are maybe engaging in people-pleasing tendencies, and where does it come from, and how can we start to actually change it. I want to do one on social anxiety. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that I want to do. So
Right.
yeah, so I'm hoping to, that's kind of the next phase of putting these workshops together. So then if people can't work with me one-on-one, that they can at least, come to these workshops and they can learn a few things at a lower price point than working with someone, working with me one-on-one, or how, so that's the goal. That is the next phase of the business.
It's such important work because, Alexis will say like science evolves one funeral at a time, right? Like people literally have to like die
Yes.
to evolve the thinking and the evolution of the perspective around what works and what doesn't work and what's good science and what's bad science, like has to
Yeah.
literally die with certain generations. And I feel like it's our generation to put out an evolved methodology for what works, right?
Yeah.
Like it really is, I feel like, a moral obligation for those of us, like, and I have such a love for women, especially who have healed from, the dysfunction and healed from corrupt systems and are now, living the hero's journey of like bringing those gifts back out into the world. So I
Yes.
think it's really, really important. And I love to see how lit up you get when you talk about it. I just love it so much. And you've taught one class at Joppa Health, and
It
you
was so
better
fun.
believe that I'm going to hit you up for more. We're going to have you on
Yes.
for more for
Yes.
sure.
I would love
Yeah, we're
that.
launching. Yeah, so the membership, like the full assessment, the personalized plan, goal setting, also it's going to include lab tests, and the personal plan will include educational content on how to live your best life on all
Mhm.
levels, right? So like metabolically, spiritually, relationally, like all of these things, right? So of course, like you have an open invitation to come
Yes,
and
I would
create
love
more
it.
lessons.
I mean, I love what
Yeah.
you're doing. So any collaboration, I embrace
Yes.
wholeheartedly. So I'm very excited about
Yes,
that.
your class was so good. Everybody loved it, and it was on behavior change. There's just one last thing that I want to ask you about. I mean, I have lots of questions, so we'll probably have to do another podcast
Yes, I'm so down.
around behavior change and all these things. But I think that acceptance is such a hard thing for people who have had some kind of like, acute trauma. Obviously there's like the dysfunctional childhood that screws you up that so many of us can relate to. But
Hmm.
then sometimes on top of that, or maybe in isolation, somebody has like a terrible thing happen to them,
Yeah,
right? Like, and in some cases it's a really terrible thing and they're not, wrong in feeling like a victim, right?
yeah.
Because that was a terrible thing that happened to them. But how do they accept it and move out of feeling like a victim in their life going forward forever and actually being in control of how they feel about it now? How, and it's a big question, and I think a lot of the reason why people go to therapy is because of some trauma that they had, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
How do you work with people to move past that thinking and really land in a place of true acceptance so they can move
Hmm.
on?
It's a really good question, and it is a real struggle for all of us in many times because of things that might happen. And it's about understanding that acceptance does not mean I like this. I think a lot of the times we think to ourselves that if I accept this, that I have to like it and that it has to be part of
Like
my
I have to be
future.
okay with it.
Yes, yes. I learned this from my friend Lisa Schlossberg, who is an incredible therapist, and she does a ton of work around healing your relationship with yourself by healing your relationship with food, or healing your basically using people's maladaptive coping mechanisms with food and working through that, and then ultimately healing your relationship with yourself through that. And I remember being in the room. I teach at her retreats most years, and I remember her being in the room of women who are more larger bodied, and they're constantly fighting with themselves, right? They're constantly thinking, I hate my body, I want to change my body, I don't like my body, it's the devil, it's evil. And she says, what if you accepted your body? And the women in that room said, I cannot do that. I cannot
Mm-hmm.
accept my body. And she said, why? And a lot of them offered, because then I'm accepting that it won't change. Then I have to
Hmm.
deal with what it is now. If I accept it, then maybe I'm going to stop fighting for change. And
That makes
that was,
sense.
yeah, and that was really interesting to me. And then she said, but if you continue to view your body that way, you are now viewing your body, which is your home, as the enemy. And
Yeah.
what happens when you view your body as the enemy? You are going to be in a constant state of panic. So, how will you ever change it? Going back to creativity and play and how we learn and grow, right? How will you ever change your body if it is the enemy? If it is
Right.
the cause of all your pain and suffering? And that for me was a huge wake up call. I was like, "Whoa, that's good stuff." I'm sitting there as a speaker at this event, but I also go because I just like eat
Yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
up. I'm like, "Oh
But
my
what if
god!"
it's not your body, right? Like, I get that's
Right?
a really
Yes.
big one, and thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. But what if it's an
As an example.
experience, like, a rape
Yeah.
or God forbid, like some kind of
Yes.
horrible accident or a tragic loss of someone you love, or like something that someone
Absolutely.
did to you that they wronged you and you were the victim? Because for me, it was really a journey
Yeah.
to recognizing that bad things happened to me, but I'm not a victim. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
and
Yes.
like moving out of victim consciousness into
Mhm.
I create my life. From
Yeah.
this point forward, I am in charge of how I feel and my mood and how I respond to the world around me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you acted right because it's not the same. And I wanted to paint that analogy of the body because I thought it was really, it's like,
That's a big one
it's
too.
so, yeah, 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 it's so good. It is about going through the process of allowing yourself to feel the grief and the pain. First of all, that's the biggest thing is like, you have to give yourself the opportunity to understand that your body needs time to heal from this and that you are allowed to grieve and you are allowed to feel sad and give yourself permission to do that and let those emotions move through you and process them. Because if you don't allow that, you will be stuck in not actually metabolizing that experience and having
Hmm.
it flow through you. It will just be jammed in there and it will be part of your identity and how you view yourself and you'll just be angry and upset and hurt and continue that victim mentality. So I think honoring your need, the human need that we talked about earlier of the human experience of feeling all emotions, including the ones that we try to avoid or are unpleasant, honoring that and giving yourself the time and the space to actually process that and feel it. Because if something bad like that happens, right, it is a huge impact on our bodies and our lives. And I don't like the spiritual bypassy stuff of like, oh,
Yeah,
everything
no.
is great and blah blah blah. And I know you don't either. Like, oh yeah, just whatever, life is good. I don't agree with that because it's dismissing the full human experience of like we do endure pain and suffering. So I think there has to be an opportunity and a space held. Hopefully, if you're doing this with some sort of body worker or therapist or yoga instructor or whoever it is, that they are able to hold that space for you and allow you to just be. I feel like we need permission to cry. We need permission to grieve. It's like we're not allowed to do it. It's like I mean, I'm such a public crier. Like I cry anywhere, but like, so I like crying on the
But you're
stuff.
supposed to like just get over it. Like, okay, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, it's been 3 years,
Right.
whatever. You're supposed to just get over it. But if you haven't actually really truly processed it, like really truly felt it,
Yes.
like gone into the pain,
Mm-hmm.
then you can let it go.
Yes, yes, right, exactly. Like, how are you supposed to get over it if you haven't actually allowed yourself to process it? Like, you can't. So, hopefully, you're finding if you're struggling to do it on your own, you find a practitioner to work with who can hold that space for you and give you full blown permission to just scream and cry and do whatever you need to do. Because I think that's so important. And, when people are going through stuff, that's why I love that I have the training and the more hands on work because I can sometimes a touch, right? Touch
Mm.
unfortunately can be dangerous in the place like you said someone could go through rape. It could be the cause of issues, but it can also be so healing in so many ways if it's appropriate to that person.
Yeah.
So maybe sometimes if I think it's appropriate using gentle touch or being with that person, just creating that space. So I think one that is really really important in this acceptance process. And then from there, shifting that mindset into thinking, how do I use this experience to start to change things in my life and grow? And I know sometimes that can sound almost a little, I don't want it to
Like
sound,
condescending.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I hate to even say that because I
But
know
no,
it might,
that was a good lesson for you. And you're like, really? Because that was really
yeah.
traumatic and painful. So yeah, I don't
No,
think
no,
so.
no. Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's understanding that we're here. I think we're here on this planet to have an experience for growth and change and evolution. And we all are here with our unique gifts and we're all here with our unique experiences. And yes, there are people, it's not fair. There are people who just seem to have an easier life than others. You
I
know,
know.
that's
I know.
it sucks. It really, really sucks. I had a patient say to me the other day, she goes, it just feels like even when things are good, they're still bad. And it's just
Mhm.
always shitty. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to lie. Like I had, what do I have a grand cross in my chart. That's what Alexis said to me. She said, because Keith, Alexis's partner, and I have the same exact birthday, same year. So our charts
Yeah,
are
yeah, I
very
remember
similar.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, you have a grand cross. And I'm like, what does that mean? I might be butchering her words, but she was like, oh, you're kind of like destined to a life of hardship, And like my astrologist said, she's like, yeah, things are going to be hard for you. And of course I could hear that and think to myself, oh my gosh, this is gonna like buckle up, Elyse. This is gonna effing suck,
Yeah.
like, and I'm just gonna
Yeah,
like
yeah.
wait. But I viewed it as more of, and in the past I would have viewed it like that, but I now view it more of like, okay, my life is the way it is because I have a lot of lessons to learn. And I also think that every experience I encounter, because I have this beautiful gift of being in the profession that I'm in, every experience and hardship and challenge I encounter is also an opportunity for me to not only learn and overcome it for myself and prove to myself that I have the resilience and the capabilities, but I'm going to learn something that's going to help someone else in the future, probably.
1000%. I
Yeah.
really feel like it is, I resonate with that so much. I really feel like it is once you understand that just by being on a different frequency, and there's really no other way for me to explain it than that, not being in it so much in that it overwhelms you, but being able to observe it objectively and
Yeah.
say, like, okay, but then embodying a different relationship to it
Hmm.
by doing that, it has ripple effects in like the collective aura. Like your
Yeah.
presence, right? Like just by living in a different way, your presence is actually medicine for humanity. And I know that sounds like way profound, but I really believe that.
I
I
believe
believe
it
we
too.
are like living and breathing the change we want to see in the world.
Yes, yes. And that's where there's this one practitioner I follow on social media. I can't remember her name. Cassie Huckabee, I think her name is something like that. And she
I don't know
always
her.
I'll send you her stuff. She's a naturopathic doctor or an MD or PA, something like that. And she always says your life is your medicine. Your life is your medicine. And I didn't understand it for a long time, and then it finally clicked that my life is my medicine. And the experiences that I have, even if they feel really crappy, are part of this medicine. It's part of the healing journey. And the people who come into my life, whether it's a quote unquote good experience or a bad experience, they are part of my medicine. And these things that happen to us, we can, and once again, yes, like you said, it could be really awful, awful things. And I do not want to dismiss the fact that there are really awful human beings in this world who do heinous things to people. And
Yes.
it is disgusting and it is unexcusable. And I just want to explain that that is not what I'm not condoning any behavior or like, oh, that should have happened to you. You asked for, no, absolutely not. But where can I take this experience and actually like how do I take this and realize that I am also an incredibly resilient person and I can come back from this. I can feel it, I can grieve it, I can process it. It is part of my past and it's part of my story. And I also have ability for tremendous growth and learning. And we're real, like I said early on, our bodies are so incredible and inherently intelligent. And
They
you know,
are. We
rewire.
also have to support them. And we
Yes.
didn't get into the coffee enema conversation that we wanted to talk about,
We
but
have to go there.
along those lines, when we're talking about like things that we have unresolved in our story,
Hmm.
what has worked for me is moving the energy physically. Like you talk a lot about the somatic practices that are helpful for people. But, and I know this is like kind of a leap from talking about, heinous things, but it's not really in my book because the body keeps the score, right? Like
Yes.
it's oftentimes this tension, this undigested, unmetabolized experience that's living energetically within us. And some people will even say in our aura, like if you've ever gone into the biofield stuff. And for me, even the breath can help do that, right? Visualization can
Absolutely.
help do that, right? So it doesn't have to be like tangible stuff, but massage has been one of the most therapeutic, cleansing, clearing things for me in my
Yes.
journey,
Yes.
right? Just like moving energy through the body, like through all the meridians, right? So long as it's like intuitive and like well, you know, like well intentions touched and you're not getting a massage from someone that treats you like a slab of meat, right?
Right. Exactly.
Um, but then like even along the lines of the coffee enema, like talking about like how much we hold inside and like we just don't let go of,
Right.
and the ability to either exhale it out or poop it out or cry it out or
Yes.
sweat it out, right? Like sometimes we have to just eliminate it,
We have to.
get rid of it.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And there's so much power in the healing. And I actually I want to go back to this conversation really quickly. Is it okay if I jump right back to what
Yes.
you said about, because I'm having another thought I want to share with the audience about when something bad happens, like rape, because you used the example of rape. And I have a patient who actually experienced this many, many years ago and could not even hear the word, could not even hear the
Yeah.
word, would completely disassociate. And I think even like just any, healthy human being hears the word and it's like, for me, it's like
Yes.
tension, right?
It's yes.
And through the work that we've done, through, right, what you're talking about, getting the body healthier, supporting the nervous system, getting things out, detoxing, touch, massage,
Mhm.
right? I do a lot of cranial sacral on her. We have gotten to a place, and we did some exposure work around hearing the word and all these things, because it was
Mm.
very activating, very triggering, like
Mm.
disassociative states. I
My
can't
heart.
function. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. Doing these other things that nourish and support the body and help, once again, make it more human, help it detox, help it, feel touch, feel safety. We were actually able to get her to a place where recently she was able to watch a movie that used the word rape, and she was able to
And
sit
not
and watch
react.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
That's
was the
huge
moment.
progress.
Oh my gosh, we were both crying because it's just like, this is the work. And it's like, imagine the amount of work and growth it took to get there and to be able to do that. And like you said, we need these things. We need to support our body in this way, and the coffee enemas and this and that. And look at what can happen. Look at what can change
Yeah.
and shift.
With patience, like not trying to rush the urgency, right?
Yeah.
It's like the urgency in the healing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Oh my
It's like, why am
gosh.
I not better? Why am I not better? Why am I not better?
Oh, that
You
was the
know?
biggest lesson I had to learn, was patience. Was
Yeah.
patience. It was like, my practitioner would suggest that we do something eventually, some sort of detox, some sort of protocol. I'm like, okay, let's do it. Like, when can I do it? When can it be done? Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, shh,
Yeah.
slow, slow. And I
Yeah.
finally accepted it's going to take a while. I mentioned earlier, okay, I'm on this really baby dose of Seroquel for sleep, and I don't love it. I'm not so thrilled about it. I don't want to be on it. And it's been a real challenge to get off of. Interestingly, more than Xanax, it's been harder. But
Really.
yeah, which is so wild, right? Because you'd like think that but they're all kind of operate similar ways. And I'm just like, okay, it's gonna happen, and I'm going to accept right here and now. Going back to
Yeah.
acceptance, I'm going to accept that this is what it is right now. Is that I'm
Yeah.
on this medication. I don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be my future. But I'm going to accept that that is what it is right now, so I can go live my life and live a full life, and I don't have to wait. I don't have to wait until I get off this medication to think to myself, life will be so much better when, because I did that for so
Right.
long. Life will be so much
Right.
better when I make this amount of money and I've achieved this in my job and I've gotten off this medication and I do and I look a certain way. And that's no way to live life. I
It
can,
doesn't work like that either.
no, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that.
I can still live an awesome, beautiful life and still want to change this thing. And it's okay,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And that's where the patience comes in of like, I have a lot of work to do probably before I'm able to get off of this. Still, I mean, I've done a shit ton of work. It seems like it's going to be a little bit more, and it's okay because it's part of the process.
How do you do that? How do you know when you're ready to get off of it? I mean, because you talk about even on your Instagram that you work with people to get off of medications. And
Mhm.
for me, because I was on thyroid medication, getting off the medication was a really confusing time because I was like, I don't know. It was like you're swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
It's like that in between phase is actually kind of harder than being sick. At least for me, it was. It
Yeah.
was a challenging time for me. So how do you know when you're ready?
So with my patients, I assess a lot of factors. I'm looking to see what are their daily habits and routines and how do they feel? Are they doing all the basics that I'm
Yeah.
asking them to do? Because if they're not, it's not a good time. And even things like I had
Right.
if a patient wants to get off SSRIs and I think it was like November. And I said to him, it's November in New York City. Do we really think it's a great time to be starting this when it's about to get really dark all the time and cold and gloomy? Like, especially when your nervous
Yeah.
system is impacted with seasonal depression. So he said, yeah, you're right. And I said, why don't, as soon as spring happens or as soon as the end of winter is starting, let's then
Which
work
was
that. And
yesterday. Thank
which was
God.
yesterday,
Yeah.
yes. And that's why we have it in our calendar that we're going to revisit this in a few weeks. But because money's ready. But I said also lay the groundwork in the next few months. This is what we got to be doing.
Yeah.
Are you eating better? Are you breathing better? Are you sleeping better? Are you moving? Are you getting outside? Right? Are you making sure that these things are important? And do I think that you are in a good place physically, mentally, emotionally to start this process? And so that's really a lot of what I consider. And it's once again super individualized because everyone is going to be so different. But you also have to be prepared mentally that it's not going to be fun. Like
Yeah.
you're
You
going
might
to go
feel
through this.
shitty.
Yeah, you're going to go through this detox process of getting off the medication. Your body's going to be in, hey, I mean, getting off any drug is no fun if your body's, dependent on it. So do you have the resources and time and the ability to support your body extra when doing this?
Yeah.
Which is where I'd mentioned to you that the coffee enemas were huge in me getting off the meds, like huge in helping
It's
detox
like
my
helping
liver.
to eliminate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I don't know if I could have done it without them and sauna and things like that, like really opening up my detox pathways because, right, my body needs all the support it can get. If you're trying to get off of medication, but you're eating McDonald's all the time and you're not seeing sunlight, like your body is
Yeah.
not getting any sort of nutrients or nourishment that it needs to thrive. So it's going to be a really, really bumpy process. And I don't think it's going to be very sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. But it goes hand in hand, right? Like when you're ready to take care of yourself and really invest
Yeah.
and make those choices, then you're ready to do the difficult things. Like
Yeah.
they go hand in hand. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my biggest thing is, look, I'm sure I have friends who judge how much money I spend on my food and my supplements and my healthcare. And look, and not everyone has the access, the ability to do it all the time. I think there are ways to do it less expensively, but this is the only one I got. This body's going to be with me
Yeah.
forever. This is my home. My purse is going to last me 20 years. My house might last me 40 years or 50 years. Right. But at the end of the day, the shirt might last me 5 years. This is what I got from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I got
Yeah.
to take care of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to me,
I think
yeah,
for
nothing's
those
more
of us that have
important.
been sick, nothing's more important, especially
No,
for those of us that have been sick. You don't ever want to go back there.
no, you don't want to go back
You
there.
don't ever want to go back there. So you're like, this is worth it to me. So if that meat is more expensive than that meat, you better believe I'm going to invest in the stuff that's going to make me feel good
Oh,
because I never
yeah,
want to go back to feeling bad again.
exactly. I say if I could wake up every morning, not every morning because we said it's not possible every morning, but if I could wake up 95% of mornings feeling awesome and feeling good during the day and then be able to go and pursue my dreams because I feel good, that's
Yeah,
that's wealth. Like there's all
it
different types
really
of
is.
wealth, but right, there's financial wealth, there's friend wealth, but gosh, if you feel good in your body, I don't think there's better wealth than that.
Yeah, no, this is the new rich for sure.
This is the new rich.
Yeah,
This is
this
the
is the new rich.
future. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's all about, and once it clicks, right? Once you actually realize how great you feel doing these things, you can't, you're not going to start buying crappy meat. It's just not a thing. But you start to value your body and put it, put the energy and resources into it, and you want to feel good. You could have private jets, you could have private yachts, who cares if you feel like crap? Who cares?
Well, and most people that I know that are very wealthy don't feel good and they aren't happy
Right.
and they aren't living from their heart.
No.
They
No.
don't have good relationships. Yeah.
No.
Most people that I know.
More
Yeah.
money, more
I,
problems, right?
yeah. Yeah. This is the new rich, right? Is
Yeah.
having strong boundaries, loving yourself, going
Yes.
to bed early, waking up with the
Yes.
sunrise, living on purpose, not selling your soul for a paycheck, right? This is the new rich.
Exactly. Exactly. So the more we
I'm
can
here for it.
impact people through this work, the better. And the healthier people are, the higher they vibe. And we're all collectively, like you said, collective consciously coming together and feeling that energy and being healthier together and healing the
It's
world.
happening. Yeah, it
Yes.
really is happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so
Yeah.
too. I think so too.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
such an inspiration. I'm like both very inspired by you and also so proud of you. Like I hear
Thank
your story and I
you.
know, it's like it's easy to hear and see you like all bubbly and glowing and supporting others, but I know how hard it is. Like I know how hard you've worked. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I know to some degree.
Well,
Like I mean,
you've
I might
done it
know all the
yourself.
details, but
Yeah.
I really honor and respect the amount of work that you've done and
Thank
how you're
you.
using that to help other people.
That means so much to me, and I really, really appreciate that. And it's not always, you don't always get seen like that. So I really, really appreciate that, and really seriously, like right back at you, like, and not just saying that. I think your work is
Mm,
incredible and so inspiring, and
thank you.
I feel like I've only scratched the surface with what I've learned from you, and even just the fact that you're,
Oh,
yeah, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited to collab more and learn more and hang out and eat some raw ice cream together. But like the fact that you're doing all of this, not just launching the membership that you're launching, but the podcast, right? Like we before we got
oh
on, you
yeah.
said, I'm doing this. I want people to hear stories of hope. And
Yep.
oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Because that's what we need. We need more of that in the world and more of that reinforcement that anything is possible. I really, really believe it. Like I've seen such
Anything's
incredible things
possible.
happen. Once you've seen incredible things happen, you're like anything is you never know what's going to happen. And I be open to the opportunity and the magic, having patience, recognizing that healing doesn't happen overnight. It can take years,
Right.
but you can see changes and you will look back in a year, 2 year, 3 years and realize that if you put the work in, you're going to be a different person.
Yeah,
You know?
1000%. And you're gonna
Yes.
like who you are.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so huge. Liking yourself.
Yes.
Oh, the self-talk. That's a
Yes.
whole other podcast topic is the
Well, we'll
self-talk.
do it
And
again.
yeah, I would love
Yeah,
that. I
we'll
would
do it
really, really
again.
love that.
Yeah, there's a
Yes.
whole, yeah, I mean, it really is endless. Like, the whole, I mean, mental health, I feel like I don't even know if I like that language
I
around
know.
it, but
I also agree with you.
you got to give it a label, I guess, to make it make sense in conversation. But
Right.
yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but hopefully people are super inspired by what we discussed today because
I
of
hope
course there is
so.
hope. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This was so awesome. So awesome.
Oh,
Thank
I
you.
agree. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
making the time,
Thank
and for your
you.
enthusiasm. So much enthusiasm. I love that. And like I said, it was really timely for me because I was a little over serious in the beginning. And
Yeah.
now that I've had a few episodes, I was like, oh, I'm really looking forward to talking with Elyse and like just loosening up a little bit. So thank you for being you. Where can people find you?
Yes. Okay. So I'm on social media at nerdy underscore therapist. So it's nerdy like neurology, NEURDY underscore therapist. So I'm there. My website, which is actually nerdytherapy.com, or my name, Elyse Shunkowitz, LCSW.com, which we'll give the information.
Yeah, I'll put it
Um,
all in the notes.
yeah, yeah. So that course is on there. The I Hate Meditating course is on the website if people are interested. And then they can also sign up for my newsletter. I don't really do a newsletter yet, but they can sign up to be on a theoretical newsletter in the future where I can send them information if they want to join workshops or things like that I'm going to be launching, like I mentioned earlier, social anxiety, people pleasing, behavior change, things like that. And of course, I'm always open to hearing what people think and feedback and comments and thoughts. So please reach out, email me. We'll give the email as well, Elyse@nerdytherapy.com, spelled the same way, NEU. So that's where you can find me.
Yeah, everybody should reach out to you and just sort of be in your world because I know that you're going to continue to do amazing things. Like they're just going to get bigger and better and more impactful. I just have no doubt about that
Thank
at
you.
all. So
Thank
everybody,
you.
yeah, reach out to Elyse, be in her world. And if you like this conversation, be sure to share it with somebody that you think might like it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Looking forward to speaking with anyone who's out there listening and wants to reach out. And this was so awesome. And I look forward to more conversations like this.
We'll do it again. Thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you, Cheryl. It's awesome.
Yay.